Hello everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. So, the upcoming Raiden Shogun and Kokomi banners are now right around the corner, or depending on when you're tuning in, they might already be here. And while I would bet that the majority of players and content creators would lean you towards the Raiden Shogun over Kokomi if you asked and could only choose one, what if I told you that both are equally valuable depending on what you already have on your account? While we have already gone over both of these characters in their own separate Are They Worth It videos, I still got a lot of comments asking me to compare them side by side. So today we'll be covering both the Raiden Shogun and Kokomi's gameplay styles as well as their biggest strengths and weaknesses. And then towards the end of the video, once we have a better understanding of how they function, we'll break down which one's going to bring more value depending on what you already have and your playstyle preferences. And since Hoyoverse recently released the 4 stars that are going to be on their banners, I'll make sure to touch on how they might factor into your consideration towards the end of the video, especially since they're so skewed towards one character in particular. Hopefully that way you can make the best decision for your account and decide on who would be a better fit for you. Let's go ahead and start out with the Raiden Shogun. Despite a slightly shaky release, the Raiden Shogun has quickly become one of the most coveted characters in Genshin Impact. But what exactly is it that makes her so strong? Well, to be completely honest, at C0 she actually isn't technically that strong in regards to raw strength. Well, at least not when you're directly comparing her to other C0 DPS units such as Ganyu, Hu Tao, Ayaka, etc. This is mainly because she doesn't have access to elemental reactions such as Melt and Vaporize, nor the damage multipliers at C0 in order to keep up with them. So if she can't do these things, why is she considered so strong? Well, I think that it breaks down into 3 separate points: utility, damage amplification, and improving team synergy. What C0 Raiden might lack in terms of raw power, she more than makes up for it in regards to what she brings to the team. For example, while her skill may have lower damage multipliers than characters such as Fischl, Beidou, or even the recently released Yae Miko, it provides way more utility by providing coordinated AoE electro damage with a whopping 25 skill duration and a 10-second cooldown, meaning that it can be up 100% of the time, and it also increases all of your party members' burst damage depending on how much their burst costs. So not only is she able to enable multiple reactions from off-field, easily allowing you to keep up things like Superconduct for physical teams, Electrocharge for taser teams, and while more situational, Overload for staggering or dealing AoE damage to multiple enemies. While at the exact same time, so long as you have her skill up, you're also increasing each one of your teammates' individual burst damage. And while this damage increase may be a little less impressive on characters with only a 40 cost burst, if you run her with characters with an 80 cost burst or higher, you're going to be seeing a 24 to 27% damage increase to their bursts, which when paired with characters like Eula can be absolutely explosive. But her elemental skill is only half of her value. The other half comes with her elemental burst. While Raiden's burst may only last 7 seconds, it really provides quite a punch and the grand majority of her damage. Essentially, it switches up her stance, changing her weapon type from a physical polearm into an electro blade, meaning that all damage that she deals during this 7-second window is not only amplified but turned into electro damage. Her burst also scales off of something unique to Raiden Shogun called Resolve, and by building stacks of Resolve you're able to increase her overall damage. You build Resolve by using other characters' elemental bursts, or whenever a party member picks up energy. So an optimal rotation will have all of your other characters using their bursts, so that you can finish off with the Raiden Shogun in order to deal the maximum amount of damage. On top of this, during her burst state, she's also able to refund energy back to your teammates. This energy regeneration is based off of her burst talent level, as well as how much energy recharge she has over 100. So in other words, a well-invested Raiden Shogun can give you over 20 energy back simply by hitting enemies 5 times during her burst. And while this doesn't completely eliminate the need to build ER on your other characters, it does mean that you can ease up a little bit on their substats, and instead focus a little bit more on stats that'll improve their overall damage. For example, if you are running a character like Xingqiu in the Raiden National team, if you're running him with the Sacrificial Sword, you can probably get away with running him with 160 energy recharge instead of the standard 180. Or similarly, you could probably get away with 170 energy recharge on Xiangling instead of the standard over 180 to 200. As you can imagine, this greatly alleviates the strain on your team in regards to funneling energy into your teammates, and allows for much smoother transitions and rotations. And on top of all of this, thanks to one of her passives, the Raiden Shogun also gets an electro bonus damage directly based off of her total ER. So ER is not only good for maintaining burst uptime for both her and her teammates, but it also increases her overall damage. If I'm remembering correctly, I think that only Mona also scales off of ER, making this both a very valuable passive as well as a pretty rare one. Okay, and while that was quite a lot of positives, there are still a couple negatives that I do have to mention. The first being one that's a little bit in the gray area and could be seen as a positive or a negative, and that's the fact that the grand majority of her overall damage potential is locked behind her Constellation 2. While there is a huge misconception that C0 Raiden isn't isn't strong, it is completely undeniable that she does get a massive power spike with her constellations. This is because her Constellation 2 allows her to ignore 60% of her enemy's defense, which almost ends up doubling your damage. So if you want to turn Raiden Shogun into a top tier damage dealer that can compete with other main DPSs, you're either going to have to save up a lot of primos or spend in order to get those constellations. However, since it is only the second constellation, this could be seen as a positive, considering that you're getting the value of a Constellation 6, but only summoning for her Constellation 2. The community is pretty divided on whether this is a positive or a negative, so I'll leave that up for you to decide for yourself. Another important and less talked about thing to consider is that the Raiden Shogun doesn't really have good synergy with characters like Ganyu, Ayaka, and sometimes even Hu Tao. While you technically can run Raiden Shogun with these characters, she doesn't really offer much in terms of team synergy, and you're much better off putting her on another team. So if you were hoping on getting the Raiden Shogun in order to improve any of these characters, then you're better off skipping her unless you're planning on building a completely separate team. And while I know that plenty of people are probably sick of this by now, I can't let this video go without saying that she doesn't work properly with Beidou. This is because you can't activate Beidou's off-field damage while in the Raiden Shogun's burst. This is because the Raiden Shogun's attacks during this time frame are considered burst damage and not normal attacks. And since Beidou's burst needs you to physically hit the enemy with your normal attacks, they simply can't proc, which is honestly one of the biggest shames in Genshin Impact because they would probably be one of the best duos in the game. But besides those issues, there's really not too much wrong with the Raiden Shogun. She's a really solid character and definitely an account booster, so it's no wonder why so many people want her during her rerun. However, as I mentioned earlier, Kokomi is also very valuable, and in certain instances probably more valuable than the Raiden Shogun depending on what you have. So let's go ahead and talk about Kokomi's strengths so that we can get a better picture of what she's all about. I currently think the best way to describe Kokomi is as a pure utility unit. While she might not be able to add that much in terms of damage since she's unable to crit, she's still extremely valuable because she's able to offer you a lot while only taking up one team slot. Not only is she one of the best healers in the game, but because her HP is so high because of how you build her, she can easily tank just about anything that an enemy has to throw at her, and even if they deal a decent amount of damage, she's going to be able to heal right back up. And while her auto attacks on their own aren't very valuable, I do think that her elemental skill and burst more than make up for it. Her elemental skill summons a jellyfish that not only periodically heals you, but also provides consistent AoE off-field hydro application, making it much easier to apply freeze, electrocharged, and vaporize. And because whenever you activate her burst, it also resets the duration of her elemental skill, this means that you can have both healing and AoE hydro application up 100% of the time. On top of this, Kokomi's burst does increase her overall damage, as well as how much she's able to heal. So whenever you find yourself in a tight spot, you can switch to Kokomi, use her burst, and heal up your entire team while dealing a decent amount of damage. Now, is this damage absolutely amazing compared to other DPS units? No, definitely not. But with her new designated artifact set, the Ocean Hued Clam, if built properly, she can easily deal over 20,000 damage per bubble pop every 3 seconds. So while that might not be as impressive as an 80,000 charge attack from Hu Tao or Ganyu, I think the fact that she can tank just about any attack that an enemy can throw at you, while simultaneously healing your entire team, makes her pretty solid in my eyes. And as I mentioned earlier, one of her key strengths is her role consolidation. Being both a healer and a hydro applicator tends to give her a little bit of a leg up compared to Xingqiu and Mona, because while Xingqiu and Mona can definitely deal out more damage, typically playing with Kokomi feels a lot more comfortable and also allows you to slot in more aggressive teammates, which can end up leading to overall higher team damage. Kokomi can also act as a damage booster by equipping the 4-piece Tenacity of the Millilith and the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers, giving up to a 68 attack increase to the next character that comes onto the field after Kokomi. But again, just like the Raiden Shogun, she does have a few weaknesses as well, so let's quickly go over them. First off, Kokomi only truly excels in freeze and electrocharged teams, meaning that while she absolutely shines on teams with Ganyu and Ayaka, as well as teams with Fischl, Beidou, Raiden Shogun, or Yae Miko, any other team you place her on, she's just going to be average. I'm not saying that she's a bad unit when you pair her up in other team comps, I'm just saying that she only truly excels at 2. This is because if you are dealing with Vaporize, Xingqiu, Mona, and Child will all out DPS her. Another very important thing to mention is that if you are running Kokomi as your main damage dealer / driver, she is heavily dependent on her teammates in order to deal consistent damage, meaning that you will have to heavily invest into her teammates, otherwise she's not going to be hitting hard enough in order to take down your enemies. Or if you do take them down, it'll just take a very long time, which honestly just circles back to the fact that she's not able to crit once you ascend send her over a certain level. And lastly, for negatives, there are a lot of other healers that you can technically replace her with. While none of them completely fill all of the roles that Kokomi does, and I do still think that Kokomi is the best in slot in certain team comps, she's definitely not the only option out there, and thus I think that makes Kokomi a very nice character to have, but not a must-pull by any means. But again, just like the Raiden Shogun, she actually doesn't have that many negatives. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section where we can discuss which character is going to be the better choice for you and your account. The first thing that you should probably do is look at who your main DPSs are. Do you main Eula or Yaemiko? If so, then you definitely want to pick up the Raiden Shogun because she pairs exceptionally well with both of these units, mainly because she helps fix their energy recharge issues while also providing them with a significant boost to their burst. And while not an absolute must, she does pair very well with Yoimiya because her AoE electro damage helps take care of Yoimiya's AoE problems by providing consistent overload damage. And since Yoimiya is long ranged, she doesn't have to worry as much about chasing down her enemies. Or are you looking for a new main DPS? Because while Raiden is technically a sub DPS, she can just as easily be your main DPS if you have the right teammates. Point in case the Raiden national team, or hypercarry Raiden with Kazuha, Bennett, and Kujo-Sara, which could be an excellent solution for dealing with the second half of Abyss if you already have a well-built team. And on the flip side, do you main Ayaka or Ganyu? Or do you have a well-built Fischl or Beidou or want to build them in the future? Cause if so, then you're probably going to get more bang for your buck pulling for Kokomi. This is because she's currently the best unit for keeping up their elemental reactions. And because of her role consolidation, she allows you to be a little bit more aggressive with who you bring onto your team. The next thing to consider is what do you need more of? Are you struggling with your rotations and keeping your party's bursts up? Because if you have a lot of characters with high energy cost bursts, then the Raiden Shogun is definitely going to be a quick fix for that. Or on the flip side, are you struggling with staying alive? Are you the type of player that struggles with dodging or takes a lot of hits in general? If so, then Kokomi is definitely the better unit, because while she can't output as much damage as the Raiden Shogun, she definitely makes playing Genshin Impact a lot more comfortable. In fact, I think she goes toe-to-toe with characters like Zhongli in this regard. So if you have both Kokomi and Zhongli, then both of your teams are going to be safe basically no matter what you do. In all honesty, I don't think that you can really go wrong with either of these units, mainly because they're both so flexible, so the real question becomes which type of utility and damage amplification do you need more, and which character do you think that you would enjoy playing most? However, before you make any final decisions, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, Hoyoverse really stacked the banner in favor of one character in particular. Not only did they put one of Raiden Shogun's best in slot, but they actually put two. While Xinyan doesn't really do anything for either Raiden Shogun or Kokomi, the simple fact of the matter is that both Bennett and Kujo-Sara are two of the keys to unlocking hypercarry Raiden, which is currently one of the top meta teams in Genshin Impact. Meanwhile, Kokomi didn't get anything. While technically both Bennett and Kujo-Sara can boost her damage, it isn't really by that much considering that she scales mainly off of HP. So keep in mind that if you do end up summoning for Kokomi, that you're not going to get any valuable teammates for her from this banner, which many Kokomi wanters might find very frustrating. In the past, Hoyoverse has been a lot better about keeping these banners a little bit more balanced, but this time they're definitely showing clear favoritism, and it's probably because the last time that the Raiden Shogun was on Raid Up, it ended up being their best-selling banner of all time. So it looks like they're giving their all in order to make sure that the Raiden Shogun sells very well a second time. Unfortunately, this means that the Kokomi banner has way less value, and the Raiden Shogun's banner is one of the best that they've had in a long time. But if you still think that Kokomi is going to be better for your account, don't let that sway you, because you can always just see the 4 stars as a consolation prize. However, keep in mind that there are other characters on the way, so you have to factor in whether Kokomi or Raiden Shogun is going to be worth it over characters like Kazuha and Ayaka, and possibly Ayato if he ends up being very good. However, if you're still questioning your choice, and you want to learn a little bit more about Raiden Shogun and Kokomi, I did make completely separate videos for them where I fully break down their kits, weapons, artifacts, constellations, and team synergies in way more detail than I did in this video. So if you haven't already seen those, definitely feel free to check them out. And if you did end up enjoying the video, please feel free to leave me a like and comment down below. It really does help me out, and I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want to see more Genshin Impact content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. But that's all for now, so until next time, best wishes, bye!